Hi, I'm Kathi Enderes, Senior Vice President of Research at the Bersin company. We're a research and advisory company for HR around the world.
Hi, my name is Subramanian. I lead the human capital practice in Tata Consultancy services. Looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
So with that, let's talk first about the first part of this talent data and business transformation. Why are we talking about business transformation and what does it even look like?
Business transformation is defined in many different ways in different organizations, but in collectively, I think everyone would agree this is about their performance in the market and performance as a business in terms of revenue, brand performance. So this is our collectively how I would define as a business performance, how that is defined from a transformation perspective.
I think that's great. Yeah. I always like to go back a little bit in time too and look at the history and why we're talking about talent data now as being critical to business transformation. For me, it goes really back to the 1800s, even when we had the steam engine that transformed how businesses performed. And then in the 60s and 70s, we had technology come in and we had the information revolution where we created IT departments and had a lot of data and ERP systems and all of that. Then in the 1990s and 2000s, the internet, of course, changed everything again. And at that time, a lot of companies were focused on becoming digital companies and delivering digital business models. But today, I think, and really accelerated by the pandemic, doing digital business is not enough anymore. You really had to become digital, and that really transforms everything that you do on a talent perspective too. So if you think about digital mindsets, digital skill sets and all of that, it's disrupting entire industries. So every industry is now becoming something else, right? So it used to be that every industry was kind of clean slate. You were in the healthcare industry, you were in the retail industry, you were in the hospitality industry, in the financial services industry. But with the digital transformation and digital disruption, healthcare companies are also becoming telemedicine companies, and informatics companies and analytics companies, and retailers, of course, are becoming online retailers, and really even hospitals and clinics, right? If you think about Walmart or CVS that are delivering also healthcare. So all of these industries are kind of merging and transforming, and people are in the middle of that because the skill sets and the jobs and the organizational models that you need are different if you're not in your specific industry anymore. So I think it's a really timely conversation that we're having as well.
Absolutely. I think the business transformation in many ways that ultimately measured transforming from one state to other state. And a lot of organizations are currently in the middle of redefining the way that how they engage with their customers, engage with their employees, how they work with their partners. There is a huge amount of transformations they are all going through because there are new business models that got accelerated in the last 2-3 years. And this basically ultimately defines their performance in the market, not just from a way that how they can survive, but also thrive in this new state. So they're constantly redefining the way that how they do their business. And it's a very interesting time indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah. It reminds me actually of many stories that we collected when we talked in the pandemic, in the beginning of the pandemic of, for example, with Tata Health, who is a big healthcare company here in the United States on the West Coast and beyond. And they told us that they used to have maybe 40 televisits per month, and then they had 400 per day, right? Because in the beginning of the pandemic, there was no choice. There was no other choice than see your doctor via video. So it became this necessity. And I think for every company, retail companies, of course, you couldn't go into a store anymore in the beginning of the pandemic. So they all had to deliver online and have the touchless services and all of that. So I think the pandemic really catapulted us into the future by 10 years. We did in 2 years, or maybe even in a few months, what we thought would take 10 or 15 years. So it's been a really big disruptor. And in the same way, I think also in the remote workplace and the hybrid ways of working, because we all thought it wasn't possible to do a lot of work remotely, right? And you probably saw that too in consulting realm, because used to be that, I know in consulting, it's usually something where you have to sit with your company, with your customer, you have to travel to their sites and all of that. But then in the pandemic, it wasn't possible anymore. So we had to think about how can we deliver these great experiences, workshops, or like working with the customers remotely. And we thought it wasn't possible, but then we realized it was actually possible. So I know from your business, you probably also have some great stories around that, how that your own business model got transformed with the pandemic.
Yeah, quite a bit of changes that we have observed during this time. Um, some of the companies that are either in the retail industry, the industry, some of the food, especially in the meat, business that they are in. There are a lot of places that they couldn't stop working. They are like more like an essential part of the whole society and economy. They still need to go back to work, and they were, accelerating their transformation into what is that they need to do in the newly transformed state. And some of the examples that could come, that comes in my mind is uh, some of the retail organization trying to figure out how they're bring the time entry systems, which used to be biometric in a way that they were doing fingerprinting. And with the pandemic in place, that wasn't their choice. They have to make it touchless and touch free, in the entry system and exit system to measure the entire time and attendance. And that was something that they had to quickly transform, and to make sure that they are present not only from an essential ways, even for their own businesses, to ensure that they provide a safe workplace, and also they provided a right amount of support to ensure that the employees felt safe in the workplace coming in, not having to go through really a fingerprinting, which can create a lot of the challenges in the beginning when there's no vaccines around. So this was immediately they shifted into touch free. In many of our customers that we worked with, we had those transformation done within a week, from going having to go through fingerprinting to a proximity sensor or other ways in which they can use a entry and exit from a time and attendance perspective. So these are and then the same retail industry, they started offering, while they may have created a safe workplace for their employees, they were having a lot of challenges in creating how their customer would feel safe when they coming into a retail workplace. So HR was in a big part of all of these to ensure that how they can support the brand new business models to ultimately transform and deliver and thrive in the place. And I think that's another set of transformation we witnessed in the retail space.
Wow. I love what you just said, Ram, because I think it really shows how HR has been catapulted into right in the center of everything that the business does, and everything, all the transformations that need to happen, and how the data about people, whether that's about their proximity, their location, but then also about their skills, their capabilities, maybe their engagement, their diversity, all of that is actually part of the business transformation and at the center of the business transformation. So maybe we can move over to what we mean by talent data and why is it so critical right now. So you want to talk a little bit more about all these touch points, all these people related data points that you collected, and give us some examples of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the business transformation, I think we both agree that it's about ability to, change in a faster way, that how you can stay relevant and stay ahead of your competition, which is basically your customer performance and the market performance, and then the brand performance. If we stick to the outcome of a transformation to three categories: customer and market and brand, then what type of talent data that you want to stay close to and have a lot of insights about. And these are the few things that I could think of. I think engagement data comes into my mind as the most important one, especially in this, a lot of uncertainty, about, sentiment of an employee, and the engagement data around how they feel about your workplace. And then skills is a very important one, as organization changing and bringing brand new business models. And in the transform state, it required even individuals part of the organization to uh, identify the list of new set of capabilities, how they can be delivered through either through upskilling or reskilling some of them. And while you do all of these, we want to make sure that we're constantly looking at how inclusion data around your hiring, the ways that you need to recognize and promote people within an organization, what type of learning talent development that you need to apply, and then appropriately fine tune your talent strategies in the way that you ultimately support the transformation as the business is transforming. These are the few areas of talent data that I would definitely focus on.
I think that's so important, because for me, it goes back to also when I think about the history of transformation that we just talked about. It used to be that we studied, not we personally, because we were not alive then, but I think in the industrial age, we studied more, people studied how much weight somebody could carry, for example. They called that industrial engineering, right? So they called that, they were studying literally how many pounds could a worker carry before they broke down. And now, of course, because every business is a people business, and people are kind of the most important asset, I think everybody agrees on that. All of these data points about not just physical strength, but how engaged people are, what's their experience, are you able to give them the right tools, the right resources, the right information to do their job well? Do they have the skills, the capabilities, and do they feel included? Do you feel like they can voice their opinions? All of these data points actually come in to inform customer success, as you said, and brand perception, and just financial performance as well for the company, of course.
Yeah, as you go through trying to support your businesses in the transformed state, while we all see that how important is talent data to support that. And it can get quite vast when it start to go down the path of data around individual data around people, skills, inclusion, learning, and the way that your process data that comes from each of the HR processes across the board around talent, around hiring, onboarding, and then your retention, attrition, and all the data around talent management. You now end up having huge vast amount of data that becomes a big of a challenge. I think that's where more of this transformation, I've seen organization which is starting to employ artificial intelligence and machine learning to get a handle on this data, because it's not just the data at the process level, it also at the experience of how someone goes through the process. Also, you want to constantly collect, you wanted to get a feel for what's the sentiment of an individual employee while they go through this, and while the change is happening, and what is the actual perception of such a change, and how those are affecting individuals in the way that you make them part of the whole change, and how that can all work together. Now you are talking about a huge amount of data, not just process data, people data, and the experience data. If you put it all together, it becomes quite vast. And having artificial intelligence and some other machine learning into this, that's where I see that they play a big role in this, to make sure that some of the biases are going away. You end of the day, you have to rely on people to interpret the data, ultimately to support the one, validate whether you are going in the right direction with your transformation, how transformation is effective, and how do you consume all this data. That's where I think artificial intelligence is coming in. And I have seen that this has become huge amount of help. One example I could think of is one of our customers that we have been working with. They are in the clinical research, and they during the pandemic time, they actually been hit with quite a bit of attrition. Their competition was some of the vaccine developers like Pfizer and Johnson and Johnson, and the entire, the life sciences, companies, they were, constantly looking for, people with a background with the clinical research because they're actively developing a potential vaccine for COVID. And this organization, this customer that we are working with, end up losing most of their critical talent who have been in the clinical research for years. And that basically came to kind of ultimately, threatening their ability to continue to support the area that they are doing clinical research on. So part of their research data that they do is basically the clinical researchers, they look up the group of mice. They have a lot of various groups of mice that they use to suit various diversity that we have in people with age group, with a precondition, and then lot of the ethnicity. Each one of them, there are groups of mice that they categorize, and that's basically their MVP or the biggest asset. And that steady group, and studying them, making them part of the whole clinical research is basically the IP of that organization. And losing this talent, threaten their ability to advance their research. And some of the stuff that they were trying to do was how, with a huge amount of attrition, how they can be successful in their ability to continue in their business. They were applying artificial intelligence not just inside, externally, to the huge amount of population of people that are out there, who out there could be the most suitable set of with a skill set which are most suited for their clinical research. And they ended up picking some of the goat husbandry people who are in that business or the industry could be the most suited to be hired into actually conducting some of their clinical research in the areas of the drug research that they are doing. And they were now opened up their ability to look into a area that no one was looking, and they were able to pick those candidates and onboard them, and usually become successful in the way that how they can continue to deliver those clinical research and stay relevant and ahead of their competition. So this is just one example of how talent data around looking at skills, what are the adjacency of those skills and who could be effective, what are the journey paths that somebody has taken and found success. You have to bring in all of the data, not just from what you have inside your organization, and also what's outside out there, because that becomes your data, that intelligent, that insights that you can bring to be successful.
Wow, this is such a great story, and it supports really well what we saw in our research too when we studied different technologies, and we found out that the most impactful technology, actually, of all of the HR technology they can have is advanced people analytics. And what you just said basically highlights that. And what we mean by advanced people analytics is, of course, not just like transactional data, but it's also data about the experience, about skills, about career pathways, about potential opportunities that people have for learning. And when you have all of that and bring it together, you're much more likely, I think you're 7 times more likely to engage and retain your employees, as you said, right? Engagement and retention. But then you're also almost 3 times more likely to exceed your financial targets, because in that point that you just made, Ram, you can't be a great vaccine maker, vaccine researcher, if you don't have the right skill sets, of course, if you don't have the right researchers, right? So you won't meet your financial targets, your customer is not going to be happy. And innovation is also really tied to people analytics as well. So all of these data points, I think, come together. I want to double back on something that you said about using artificial intelligence. So tell me a little bit more how you see artificial intelligence come in. Why is it necessary now? Because we have much more data than we can use with like humans basically doing this analysis. But explain to us a little bit more the point about artificial intelligence and its role in all of this.
So I think it all goes back to this topic of the discussion. This is transformation. Every organization is changing. the way that how organizations have set up today, in the way that how they conduct their business, in the way that hybrid is working, that completely changed. So whatever we know of and how we have done work is changed. And then there is huge amount of impact from a way that how the ecosystem of job market and the type of talent that's out there, and the way that what they are looking at their future in an organization, their connection, their purpose, all of that is changing quite a bit. And coupled with the business model change that's been accelerated, whatever we expected to happen in the last in 10 years all happened in 2 years. So you are talking about a huge amount of data, and then the data that changed so much. So when you have data that's constantly changing, it's hard for a traditional way in which you do analysis about this has become very antiquated by this approach. So artificial intelligence is where I think where it comes in to make sure that the constantly changing data and then the vast amount of data, artificial intelligence helps you to get a grip and handle on the broad nature of this. And that's where I found companies which coupled their strategies when in business strategies, try to couple that with the talent strategies supported by insights that come from artificial intelligence, have been much more nimble. They were able to make decisions much quickly, like the example that I was talking about. When they found the challenge, they were able to quickly respond and pick up skill adjacencies where they could be successful. And there is another company that customer that I've been working with. They are a lot of challenge. They are in the industry that is huge, high tech industry. The talent was huge, and the attrition's also pretty high compared to other businesses. When in that industry, they constantly kept track of the pool of talent that is in the market. Then they found that they had constantly big challenge with related to acquiring talent. Then they had a lot of open positions that left unfilled. One of the strategy that they did was they did the market analysis of the data, what happened to the folks who left that organization, and where they ended up, and then look at their current profiles and then see how those fit into the new set of requirements they have within the open position. And they re-strategize themselves, and then found that the people who left their organization and the alumni, they are much more of a higher fit than the candidate pool that are available to them. And when they redefine their strategy of hiring strategy to create a special campaign to go after alumni, they become hugely successful. Every 10 employees they were hiring, they were able to source them, 4 of them from their alumni pool, where they become hugely successful. So this is kind of, again, another application of not just the talent data that you have, the talent data that's outside your organization, which becomes and use that to your advantage, apply some AI and patterns into the kind of matching and skills about what works. This has become hugely beneficial for organizations that adopted those strategies.
Wow, now it's a great story, because I think what you just said touches everything. It touches talent acquisition, of course. It touches engaging and retaining people, and we hear from all the companies we talk with, these are the biggest challenges they have today in the people area, but quite frankly as a business area as well. So touching talent acquisition, touching retention, touching mobility too, internal mobility. I think there's a huge opportunity too to use data there, because the biggest talent pool that you have might be already within your company, right? And alumni as well. You've already pre-vetted them. They already worked out for you. How can you bring them back? It's going to reduce your time to hire, but it's also going to reduce your the uncertainty if a candidate will work out, because it's a big risk every time you hire somebody, of course. And if you have to do that quickly, you're going to reduce the time, you're going to increase the quality of hires. All of those areas, I think, are really influenced by this talent data. Anything else that we should say on artificial intelligence? What are the risks? Are there any downsides to artificial intelligence, or anything that companies should watch out on when they deploy artificial intelligence in talent data?
Talent data, I think keeping them, broad is a very important thing, because a lot of times the traditional approach of gathering insights in an organization has been the process-oriented data, and there has been very little information that was available from experience or engagement or sentiment data. And this is where I think it become little important how you use artificial intelligence, because human tendencies around sentiment and engagement and experience are sometimes temporary in nature. And when you codify that into a point in time data, artificial intelligence may lead to a lot of challenges into how do you give a different meaning than what you probably know to be true. So these are some of the limitation, I think, especially when it comes to sentiment and engagement data. And I think companies have really figured out new ways of doing it. They used to have a long huge survey related data that they used to depend on to manage the employee experience and engagement related. Now it's become a lot more quick touch points into 3 seconds, 4 second type of response related to the experience every time they get come across, not just from HR, but the general way of working, their experience in the way that how they do their work in helping their customer, developing a product, in supporting, and in any one of the cases where they are, they're collecting a lot of the sentiment data at a different points in time, so that those become a lot more based on a normalized version of what the overall sentiment look like in an organization. That's where I think some of the interpretations around artificial intelligence organization need to be caveat themselves with a very point in data around processes, easy for you to identify patterns when it comes to skills, about talent, other nature of talent development, learning, and other approaches which are very clearly documented and captured at that moment. But when it comes to combining this with human emotions and connections, that's where artificial intelligence can create comes a challenge. I think a lot of companies now, I see, they still see artificial intelligence a big part of this, but then they change the way that how they caveat that with the right type of the data, which is basically influencing their decisions around especially nudging nudging the talent around more around positive support they can give. So this is the area that is still a little bit unexplored. I'm hoping over a period of time that the focus on this become a lot more guided around ethical AI and others, so that this can become very reliable data when what comes out of AI. But I do believe in general it's still focused on process oriented, and then elements around skills and talent, other pieces of talent data that we talked about earlier. I think there I don't see any harm in, right now AI is pretty matured models are out there, and what has been coming out of them have been quite reliable, and our organization been also hugely successful in using the data in the areas of sentiment and experience and others about people related, that type of data. I think that's where there is some more work to be done.
I totally agree. The first time I heard about like bias in artificial intelligence, I was kind of algorithmic bias. I think what I heard about it took me aback a little bit. I was like, how can a machine be biased? But I think it's about the data that you feed it in, right? Because the artificial intelligence will make. They don't care. They don't have any bias themselves, but it's a thing. But of course, if you feed it a certain part of data in, then it's going to make these assumptions and suggestions based on that data that you feed it in. So I think there's the component of the artificial intelligence, but then also the ownership of the actual people that decide on what data to feed it in and what should happen with the data. So I think it's a yes and, right? It's a combination of humans with the machine as well. So totally agree with that. It's
No, absolutely. I think this transformation itself is a change, and for our organization go through as the business model change, and then you want to have, you know, we the organization use their talent data in support of their transformation have been hugely successful. That's a couple of examples that I had given. And how, and then this is where this so the volume of the data is high, and then artificial intelligence has been hugely helpful, especially when they are stuck around the process based information. Definitely I'd like to caveat that with the experience some of the organizations are attempting to gather sentiment determined through artificial intelligence by collecting sentiment data. That's where some more work to be done. But it is definitely going in a very positive direction. This is very, very important when you talk about employee experience, which is collectively having a handle on that, which is a very complex data, and it's a very vast data. It can change quite arbitrarily depending on various experience that can go on in different parts of the world for the same organization. I do believe which is this is artificial intelligence is probably the best tool that you can get, as long as the how you talk about the bias in AI and all of that is taken care. And I it's still a the huge opportunity that the organization should explore to ensure that experience is important, because employee experience is the best. Happy employees help create happy customers, and I think ultimately customer happiness and is ultimately help with the overall performance of the organization. So I think that this is all still very related, and I do believe that this can the new advancements that I'm starting to witness in these areas definitely progressing in a direction that AI could be trusted to even in the areas of experience and sentiment data.
Absolutely. Yeah, it reminds me of the study we did together, Ram, about excellence in human capital management system, whether that's Oracle or Workday or SuccessFactors or any of these other ones. It all came down to, in the end of the day, not just transforming transactions or using these systems for transactions, but really helping employees have a better experience, and in turn people can then take care of their customers better. So I think all of these systems, all of these technologies, all of these tools are in support of a great employee experience, and the data points point to that as well. What's the number one thing that you want people to take away from this discussion, Ram?
I mean, I think transformation is evolving. It's a continuous thing. Everyone, every organization that I interact with on a daily basis are transforming something related to the way that how they do business today. And I seen the personally witnessed, and that organization that has taken their talent data into their planning of their overall transformation and keep that part of that to make sure that the checks and the constant checks are there related to how the people coming along and being part of the transformation has become a huge help, and appropriately help them to fine tune the ways in which how they ultimately get to the end goal. I think that since we are talking about a huge amount of data, artificial intelligence is something that they should employ as a tool to stay on course with the ultimate end outcome of transformations, and not only being successful and ultimately take their people along, and in a way that it brings both organization objectives and the people who are part of that organizations all together to a happy workplace for everyone in the organization.
I love that. So basically using talent data to help employees have a better experience, and that in turn will help you transform your business. And that's what's necessary, not just nice to have, but necessary in today's business environment.